Following on from tutorial 126, I was going to do a series on track motion. However, I realised that I'd started this beginners series a little too advanced. Most of you, as beginners, will be aware of the content of this tutorial, but I thought that I should go to the absolute basics for the benefit of those just starting out with Vegas Pro. I'm using version 23, but the methods described are similar to previous versions. Where they differ, I will explain the difference. One of the many advantages Vegas Pro has over most other nonlinear editors is the ease at which clips on the timeline can be edited. This ensures that the beginner can start the editing process easily. Before getting into the tutorial proper, I need to mention the welcome screen. Unless it has previously been disabled, this is a window that appears when Vegas Pro is launched. It has had various designs since it was introduced in version 20 and allows a project to be created easily. It can be prevented from appearing on launch if required by unchecking this checkbox. Personally, I don't use it, but it's there if needed. I wanted to start with populating the timeline. There are a number of ways of doing this. With an empty timeline, click the Explorer tab and navigate to the directory where the media is. Select the clips in the normal Windows way and drag them onto the timeline. If the property of the clips doesn't match the project properties, you will be asked if you want to change the project properties to match the clips. It's usually best to answer yes to this. Another way of populating the timeline after selecting the clips, and this was introduced in version 22, is to right-click on a selected clip and select Add to Timeline from the context menu. Or, and again this was introduced in version 22, hover over a selected clip and click the plus sign. In both of the last two cases, the selected clips will be placed starting at the current playhead position. At this point, I want to talk about accepted naming convention. After a clip, whether video, audio or image, is placed onto the timeline, it becomes an event and is always referred to as an event. I'll be talking more about events later on. You may notice the small red dot in the top left corner of the clip thumbnails. This dot is a visual reminder that the clip associated with that thumbnail is on the timeline. This feature was introduced with version 23 and can be extremely useful when the project has many events on the timeline. We'll take a quick look at the various parts of the Explorer window now. It behaves in much the same way as the normal Windows Explorer. Apart from the obvious, there are some controls that aren't so obvious. On the top bar, there are two icons that allow you to browse backwards and forwards in your browsing history. An additional icon allows you to browse up one level. Next comes the current path. Clicking on any section will take you immediately to that destination. Two arrow icons at the end of this path allow you to view parts of the path that may be hidden due to the path's length. The down arrow icon will open up a list containing your browsing history. Select a location and you will be taken immediately to that location. The next icon forces the view to be refreshed. You would use this, for instance, if you had changed anything in that location by using the Windows Explorer options. The next icon toggles autoplay on or off. With it on, clicking on a thumbnail will cause the associated clip to be played in the preview window. The last option allows you to change how clips are displayed and allows them to be sorted in different ways. Before leaving this section, I want to mention the context menu, obtained by right-clicking on a thumbnail. Most of the options are self-explanatory, but I'll point out the ones that maybe aren't. If you click on the Trim option, the trimmer window will open and the video clip associated with the thumbnail will be displayed. Dragging the mouse over the trimmer will select a section of the video clip. Now, when the clip is added to the timeline, it will be the trimmed version. There are 4 ways of adding the trimmed version to the timeline. You can drag the selected section onto the timeline with the mouse. You can drag the selection on the trimmer timeline onto the timeline. You can click the Add to Timeline from Cursor icon. Or you can press the A key. Many users will prefer this method of trimming rather than trimming on the timeline. Be careful with the Remove option. If you answer yes to the prompt that appears, the associated video clip will be deleted and moved to the recycle bin. The Explorer option will open Windows Explorer and highlight the video clip entry. Associated with the timeline is the Project Media window. This window displays the media in the project. The term media refers to video, audio, or images. You'll notice that, although there's only 2 events on the timeline, there are 3 media items in the Project Media window. When media is placed on the timeline, it automatically gets added to this window. It stays there until it's intentionally removed. Removing it from the timeline doesn't remove it from the project. The first icon in the top bar is used to do this. On the left of the window are options for displaying project media in various ways and for creating storyboard bins. For those who aren't familiar with storyboarding, it's a method of arranging media into a suitable story. Media items can be moved around until a satisfactory result is achieved, then copied to the timeline for refinement editing. For this tutorial, I'm not going into detail about the Project Media window. The Vegas Pro novice isn't likely to use this feature until they have a much higher skill level. Most experienced videographers will use this window in the initial phase of building their video or audio compilations. I've mentioned previously that untrimmed media items added to the timeline are referred to as media events. A media event can be divided into 2 or more pieces. These pieces are then called video or audio events. It's important to note this because it affects the method of applying effects. This will be dealt with in another tutorial. When media is added to the timeline, as described in the previous section, they appear as a sequence of events, each one connected to its neighbour. The join between each event is called a transition, and these initial transitions are called jump cuts. Jump cuts are the preferred transition of many professional videographers. The problem here is, in their raw state, the media items on the timeline may have undesirable camera movement at the start of the media, or at the end, or both. It's normally necessary to trim the media to cut out those undesirable parts. Trimming media in Vegas Pro is very simple. You grab the start or end, depending on where the undesirable parts are, and pull it inwards until the video preview shows normal video. You can even trim down to single frame duration. By the way, I'm using the mouse scroll wheel to zoom in and out. Now that the events have no undesirable sections, you can decide what kind of transition you want. Another popular transition is the crossfade. This is where the end of one event fades into the start of the next event. Personally, I prefer a modified jump cut, where there's a 10-frame fade between events. This results in a soft jump cut. There's a setting in Options Preferences Editing that applies a configurable duration crossfade to events when they're added to the timeline. If you want more eye-popping transitions, there are numerous different ones under the Transitions tab. Simply make a normal crossfade, then select one of the transitions and pull it down over the crossfade. As I mentioned, trimming is very simple. So is cutting sections out of an event. First select the event by clicking it. It should now have a yellow or red border. I'll explain the difference later. Now place the playhead where you want the cut to start and press S. You can also click the split icon in the timeline toolbar, or you can select the edit option in the main toolbar and select split. You'll find that Vegas Pro provides many ways of performing simple actions. You should see now that the event has been split into two events. Now place the playhead where you want the cut to end, then press S again. The event is now 3 events. The event to be removed can now be selected and deleted in the normal way. Selection is so precise that you can remove one frame if you need to. The point to remember when splitting an event: make sure that the event you want to split is selected. If it isn't selected and there are more tracks with an event below or above the event you want to split, those events will be split also. I'll show what I mean. You can see that only the original event has been split. Now I'll deselect the event. You can now see that all the events under the playhead have been split. If you do make a mistake and split multiple events, there's a handy feature called Event Heal. Select the parts either side of the split, right-click one of the event parts and select Event Heal. This will remove the split and join the parts together again, even if they've been moved apart. Before getting into the subject of ripple editing, I need to talk about markers and regions. This is because they can be affected by rippling. Markers are labels that can be attached to the timeline by pressing M on the keyboard when the playhead is at the desired position. You can also do this by right-clicking in the space above the timeline time display, selecting Markers Regions and selecting Insert Marker. Or you can select Insert from the main toolbar and select Marker. By default, a number will be assigned to the marker and additional markers will have incremental numbers assigned to them. These labels can be renamed by right-clicking on the label and selecting Rename. Regions are areas of the timeline that are marked. They are created by left-clicking and dragging above the timeline to create a loop region. I haven't talked about loop regions yet. After the loop region has been created for the position and duration, right-click on the region and select Insert Region. The key R will do this also. As with markers, a unique number will be assigned to the region, and this number can be renamed also. Rippling, if enabled, causes events after an edited event to move such that their position remains the same relative distance from the edited event. In this section, when I say that events have been rippled, I mean all the events after an edited event. With ripple editing disabled, moving, trimming and cutting events doesn't move other events on the timeline. I'll trim and move a few of these events to show what I mean. Enabling ripple editing ensures that events move to new positions depending on how edited events are trimmed or cut. There are two basic types of ripple editing: auto ripple and post-edit ripple. Auto ripple automatically ripples events immediately after an event has been trimmed or moved. I'll enable auto ripple first, which is done by clicking this icon on the timeline toolbar. The drop-down arrow opens up the 3 modes of auto ripple. For now, I'll just make sure that the affected tracks mode is selected. This ensures that only the track with the trimmed or moved events is affected. I'll edit some events again. Post-edit ripple does the same, but not immediately. Also, it only works on one edit step. I'll disable auto ripple first. Now to edit an event. To activate post-edit ripple, go to Edit on the main toolbar, select Post-edit ripple and select Affected tracks. The events will then ripple. You can also use the shortcut key F. In this mode, markers and regions are unaffected. Let's look at the 2 other ripple modes. These determine whether markers and regions as well as events on other tracks are rippled. The second mode we can ignore for this tutorial. It mentions bus tracks, which aren't necessary for basic editing, so I don't want to deal with them now. The third mode ripples all tracks as well as markers and regions. This means that if there are markers or regions on the timeline after an edited event, those markers will be rippled as well as events on all of the tracks in the project. I previously mentioned that selected events on the timeline will have either a yellow border or a red border. This is a feature that was introduced in version 20. In versions before 20, a selected event had a yellow border whether rippling was enabled or not. It was a common complaint that there was no obvious indication that rippling was enabled, resulting in an inadvertent movement of events. From and including version 20, if rippling is enabled, any selected event would have a red border. I don't want to make this part overly long, so I'll finish there. I'll continue in the next part, where I'll deal with grouping and ungrouping events, amongst other things. Meanwhile, please consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. Until the next time, bye for now.